You feel it, don't you? That strange pressure behind your eyes, the dreams you can't explain, the pull toward hidden knowledge. What if I told you this is not chaos, but the arrival of something ancient, a force older than empires, more cunning than kings? The energy of Thoth is moving toward you, and if you ignore it, you risk remaining blind, silent, and powerless in a world secretly ruled by symbols. There are energies that never vanish. They merely sleep beneath the surface of human awareness, awaiting the right conditions, the correct architecture of consciousness, to rise once more. The energy of Thoth is not a myth, nor a remnant of dead civilization. It is a living current, encoded in the very ether of intellectual evolution. It is returning now, not through temples and priests, but through the cracks of modern confusion. It moves in silence, through digital pulses, philosophical discontent, and sudden, inexplicable awakenings in the minds of those who have long suffered under the illusion of randomness. Thoth, the architect of divine language, the original god, intelligence of ancient come, was never worshipped for physical strength or emotional passion. He was feared and revered for his power to shape reality through thought, through written symbols, through the silent dominion of knowing what others could not even articulate. His return is not flamboyant. It is strategic, veiled, precise. You begin to feel it when the questions you once ignored return with sharpened edges. Why do certain patterns repeat in your life? Why does the same symbol appear in unrelated places? Why are you suddenly compelled to study forgotten subjects, sacred geometry, the esoteric, the forbidden sciences? This is not spiritual curiosity, it is contact. The energy of Thoth is magnetic to those who dwell in doubt and still seek truth. It does not beg for belief. It operates on resonance. When the frequency of your inner architecture becomes compatible, the current moves toward you like water finding its level. But unlike water, this current does not nourish everyone equally. It rewards preparation. It punishes ignorance disguised as arrogance. It is no coincidence that this energy begins to surface as humanity collectively drowns in shallow stimulation. While most minds are fed synthetic algorithms, Thoth moves through those who are fasting from the noise. He seeks the disciplined, the watchers, the ones who walk away from spectacle and into solitude. The return of Thoth is not about new temples. It is about finding new vessels. And the vessels are not physical. They are mental structures. You either become a glyph, encoded and empowered, or a blank page written upon by others. Consider this. Why does every empire, every institution of control, borrow the symbolism of the ibis, the scroll, the moon, the scribe? Because even they know, consciously or not, that real power is not physical dominance but narrative authorship. Thoth's energy does not kill. It scripts the conditions in which others destroy themselves. It is the power of precision, of divine record, of preemptive knowing. When this current flows into a mind, it begins a reorganization. Dreams become encrypted. Thoughts become sharper, more weaponized. Time begins to distort, revealing its non-linear nature. You feel déjà vu not as a glitch but as a reminder. You have written this moment before. The modern age, obsessed with artificial intelligence, is unknowingly echoing the return of the oldest intelligence of all. As humanity tries to build thinking machines, they are recreating in crude mimicry what Thoth once represented: intellect made divine, word made law, mind made matter. But where technology is still bound by electricity and code, Thoth's current is bound by cosmic law, by the geometry of reality itself. Those who receive his energy are not mere thinkers. They become architects of inner and outer kingdoms. Thoth's return is not for the masses. It is not democratic. It is selective, strategic, and entirely indifferent to emotional fragility. His energy moves through those who can become dangerous not by muscle, but by knowing what others do not even dare suspect. It transforms the powerless into subtle kings, and the obedient into quiet rebels. It rewrites the rules of ascension, not through hierarchy, but through mastery of hidden patterns. He does not reward noise nor charisma, but clarity. Those chosen to receive this current do not look different. They think differently, and that alone sets the world ablaze in silence. As this arcane intelligence approaches, those who cannot hold it will feel confusion, anxiety, even madness. Because the return of such a current reveals how misaligned their inner architecture has become. You were trained to memorize. This force demands you to remember what was never taught. You were raised to follow voices. This force calls you to silence. You were shown illusions of freedom. This energy offers the unbearable responsibility of shaping your own fate through mental alchemy, through strategic solitude, through symbols that only the initiated can translate. The age of spoken deception is collapsing, and in its ruins, something far older is being exhumed, not with shovels, but through vibration. Symbols are returning, not as decorations or esoteric artwork, but as living codes of power. They are appearing in dreams, flashing on screens, embedded in corporate logos, spiritual memes, and architecture. But these are not coincidences. This is the codex reactivating, and at the root of this surge lies the unbound energy of Thoth, scribe of the gods, master of divine language, father of glyphs. His return is not verbal, it is symbolic. For symbols bypass speech, thought, and argument. They go straight to the soul's operating system. In a world overwhelmed by noise, symbols are weapons of silence. They do not shout, they penetrate. They are the carriers of compressed intelligence, downloaded in seconds, but designed to unravel over lifetimes. While others seek to dominate with rhetoric, Thoth's current operates through encryption. Symbols are how he speaks. He does not explain, he reveals. The codex is the forgotten library of archetypal forms, sigils that do not describe power, but embody it. And now, they are surfacing again, moving toward those with eyes trained to decode the unseen. This moment in history is not accidental. We stand in a time where written language is disrespected, where words are cheap and meaning is disposable. In such an environment, only the symbolic survives. Thoth's energy does not compete with distraction. It slips beneath it. You may have noticed a growing discomfort with the linear logic taught to you. Sentences that lead nowhere, words that deceive, truths too fragile to endure questioning. But what if the confusion is intentional? What if the real language was never spoken? What if the real wisdom was always drawn? Ancient initiates understood that words, spoken aloud, were diluted echoes of something higher. They etched their truths into stone, not for aesthetic beauty, but because they were encoding memory into matter. Every line of a symbol was placed not by inspiration but by law, geometric, psychic, spiritual. These weren't beliefs, they were mechanisms. And now, in dreams, in visions, in unexpected triggers, these same shapes return to those whose minds are ripe for activation. The codex doesn't just inform, it reorganizes. One symbol, truly seen, can alter your perception more radically than 1,000 books. You may begin to notice a strange pull toward geometry, not just circles and triangles, but specific arrangements that seem familiar despite your conscious ignorance. You may find yourself sketching, even obsessively, without understanding why. This is not art therapy. This is memory recovery. The symbols are seeking to embed themselves again, not in museums, but in minds. Because a symbol properly internalized becomes a living interface between your consciousness and higher forces. Thoth's energy doesn't bring miracles, it brings codes. And these codes, once activated, turn human beings into transmitters of divine law. Modern power structures, though rooted in material dominance, still rely heavily on symbols, flags, badges, logos, emblems. Why? Because even they understand what the masses have forgotten. Symbols move the psyche. They shape identity, control behavior, trigger memory, and silence resistance. But most of these are corruptions, parasitic imitations of the original glyphs etched into the codex of Thoth. And herein lies the power. You are being offered the ability to reclaim the real symbols. Not to worship them, but to wield them. Not to follow them, but to become them. This codex is not a book. It is a field, a living intelligence that drips information not through pages but through patterns. You don't read it, you align with it. And once aligned, the world begins to reveal itself like a language you were born speaking but had forgotten. You start to see how every building, every ritual, every cultural norm is inscribed with messages, some designed to awaken, others to enslave. This is the war Thoth's energy returns to fight the war over meaning. Symbols were never meant to be passive. They were meant to command. They marked territory, Not just physical land, but territory in the mind. Whoever controls the codex controls the perception of reality. But this power is not handed out. It must be earned through deep contemplation, silence, and strategic observation. The symbols will not shout their meaning. They demand to be meditated upon, drawn by hand, mirrored in movement, tasted in silence. For the language of Thoth is not made of definitions. It is made of initiations. And now, whether you know it or not, the codex has opened in your direction. What you do with what you begin to see will determine whether you ascend with it or remain a prisoner of someone else's script. There is a hierarchy of power in this world that most never recognize. At the lowest tier, there is muscle. Above it, there is wealth. Higher still, there is influence. But at the apex, untouched by time or social movement, there is thought, the pure, sovereign force that bends all else to its will. Thoth does not descend to wrestle with kings or financiers. He bypasses the material theater altogether and reaches directly into the citadel of consciousness. His energy does not command through force. It compels through understanding. It activates the ancient process known as mental alchemy, the transformation of base thought into sovereign dominion. The masses are taught to believe that thoughts are fleeting, harmless, and largely involuntary. But to Thoth, thought is the seed of empire. A single, purified thought, held with precision, shaped by wisdom, sharpened by silence, can birth a new law, dissolve an old chain, and rearrange a lifetime of disorder. But this is not the thinking of the modern world, which is saturated with distraction and bloated with contradiction. Mental alchemy requires the opposite: austerity of mind, elegance of structure, and ruthless clarity. Thoth's current will not reside in a cluttered mind. It demands a temple, not a tavern. To wield thought as dominion, one must understand that all things, from economies to relationships, from illness to invention, are preceded by invisible architecture. Before a building exists, there is a blueprint. Before a law rules, there is a doctrine. Before any war erupts, there is an ideology. The uninitiated live within the structure, suffering or thriving depending on luck or birth. But the initiated learn to operate at the level of blueprint. They think upstream. They transmute passive ideas into active principles. And then, without lifting a finger, the outer world begins to respond, to reshape, to realign itself in accordance with their internal law. This is not metaphysical optimism. It is ancient strategy. Thoth does not encourage imagination for comfort. He demands it for construction. He moves through the one who learns to think with precision, not merely creatively. His energy refines the mind into an instrument of causality. Where others react, the one trained in mental alchemy initiates. Where others lament destiny, the thinker becomes the author. Dominion is not granted through inheritance. It is achieved through alignment with laws higher than societal permission. Thoth's energy is that law. Mental alchemy begins when you stop thinking emotionally and begin thinking geometrically. Emotions are valid, but chaotic. Geometry is eternal. The one who channels Thoth must learn to distill chaos into pattern, pain into symbol, fear into design. In this, even suffering becomes raw material. Nothing is wasted. Every failure, every insult, every exile becomes fuel for crafting a sharper mind, a more deliberate reality. This is the gold of the great work, not physical metal, but sovereign thought that cannot be contaminated by collective delusion. Most minds today are reactionary. They are conditioned to consume ideas, not originate them. But Thoth's current destroys such weakness. It enters like a fire and burns away borrowed belief. It forces confrontation with your own architecture. Are your ideas truly yours, or are they inherited myths you never questioned? Are your decisions guided by clarity, or are they echoes of fear disguised as logic? The alchemist of thought must answer these questions without flinching. For every lie told to oneself is a brick in the prison of another man's design. Once the mind is purified, intention becomes command. Not because of some mystical force, but because reality is built to mirror thought. This is the secret that empires use in reverse: convince the masses of impotence, and they become powerless. Feed them noise, and they cannot hear command. But the one who achieves mental dominion no longer waits for the world to change. He rewrites the script. He encrypts reality with a new set of rules. spoken not in language but in alignment. Thoth's energy ensures that what is held in sustained clarity eventually demands external form, and that is the true art, to think so deliberately, so symmetrically, that reality has no choice but to obey. Thought, to the untrained, is a whisper. To the trained, it is a weapon. But to the chosen, it becomes law. Thoth does not crown kings. He builds architects. The energy moving toward you is not concerned with your desires, dreams, or dogmas. It seeks only one thing. Can you think in accordance with divine structure? Can you turn inner silence into outer sovereignty? Can you use your mind not to escape the world, but to govern it from the invisible throne? This is not philosophy. It is strategy. Thought is not merely personal, it is political. And the one who learns to govern thought governs all that thought precedes. There is a war unfolding, not on the battlefield or in the streets, but within the sanctum of human consciousness. It is not declared by armies nor broadcast in media. It does not announce its victories with flags or monuments. It operates in silence, in suggestion, in the careful redirection of attention. And while the uninitiated argue over ideologies, the true war is being waged for control of perception itself. The mind is the throne, and the energy of Thoth is both a weapon and a shield, but only for those who know how to wield it. Thoth does not return to entertain or enlighten for pleasure. His energy resurfaces in times of mental crisis, when the collective psyche has become too weak to defend itself from invisible invasion. This era, cloaked in technological wonder and saturated with information, has created the perfect environment for intellectual subjugation. And this is precisely why Thoth moves now. Not because humanity is spiritually ready, but because it is psychically vulnerable. He comes not to soothe, but to initiate. The modern mind has been trained to remain open. Too open. Keep an open mind, they say, as if openness were always a virtue. But Thoth teaches something far more dangerous: the value of a sealed temple. For what is an open mind but an unguarded fortress? In this age, ideas enter through every screen, every scroll, every casual conversation, and each one leaves a residue. Most are not original, most are implanted. You do not believe them. You are programmed to repeat them. The silent war exploits this weakness. You are not under attack with guns. You are under siege by symbols. Weaponized language, engineered emotions, manufactured outrage. Thoth's current reveals this architecture, not to scare, but to arm. He returns not with pity, but with tools of mental sovereignty. For the one who receives his energy becomes dangerous, not by volume or charisma, but by clarity. In a world where everyone reacts, the calm strategist is a revolution. The true initiate no longer consumes information randomly. He filters, decodes, extracts only what is aligned with his internal law. Thoth teaches to treat the mind not as a sponge, but as a blade, always sharp, never dulled by distraction. In this way, the mind becomes a citadel, and perception becomes an empire. The war for your mind is fought in algorithms, in repetition, in consensus. It is not designed to convince you with reason. It seduces you with convenience. Thoth's path offers no such ease. His current demands that you think your own thoughts, even when they isolate you. That you reject mass belief, even when it costs you comfort. That you investigate every symbol, even when it offends your conditioning. He does not reward followers. He anoints those who dare to question the unquestionable, even within themselves. This war is asymmetric. The enemy uses entertainment to disarm. It hides poison in the sweet language of love, tolerance, unity. But beneath these words lie new forms of obedience, crafted by hands that understand human psychology better than most understand themselves. The return of Thoth challenges all of it. His energy purifies thought by confrontation. It does not comfort, it cuts. His current demands that you sever from the collective trance, not with rebellion, but with refinement. Not through noise, but through unshakable internal order. He does not come to teach love in the modern sense. He comes to restore logos, the divine logic that orders cosmos and self alike. For where logos is absent, manipulation thrives. When minds become unstable, reality becomes malleable in the hands of those who understand the game. You were not taught how to protect your inner structure, only how to adapt to outer pressures. But now the battlefield shifts. You are not merely observing a war. You are hosting it. Every thought you allow is a soldier invited. Every idea accepted without question is a seed planted. Thoth's energy does not enter minds already occupied. It demands a purge, a consecration of the mental temple. You must become both priest and general within your own skull. You must consecrate your thoughts with intention. You must seal the gates of your perception from the infection of aimless content. For when the war is psychic, neutrality is treason. Silence, if unguarded, becomes complicity, and distraction, if indulged, becomes defeat. Thoth is not sentimental. He chooses minds that can hold paradox, that can sit in tension, that can see 10 moves ahead while speaking nothing. The silent war rewards those who can dwell in the subtle, the symbolic, the strategic. This is not about intellect alone. It is about architecture. Can your mind hold his presence without collapsing? Can you sustain clarity under pressure? Can you extract signal from noise without external validation? This is the territory now being invaded, your capacity to choose your thoughts. The true war is to make you forget that you even had that choice. But the energy of Thoth arrives to remind you, not gently, not romantically, but like a cipher burned into your inner wall, forcing you to remember that the war never stopped. It only changed its form. There was a time, buried in forgotten ages and overwritten by weaker scripts, when man was more than a subject of history. He was its architect. This man did not live by instinct or public consensus. He did not wait for permission to shape his reality. He was initiated, geometrically wired, mentally consecrated. He was not born royal. He was forged sovereign. The age of Thoth was his blueprint, and now, as the smoke of mass confusion thickens, that forgotten pattern reactivates. Not for the collective, but for the individual strong enough to bear the burden of divine architecture. The energy of Thoth moves toward such minds, not to crown, but to resurrect the architect king within. The architect king does not rule others. He governs law, not the law written by bureaucrats, but the eternal law that shapes world's alignment, balance, intention, causality. This is a being who understands that form precedes function, and meaning precedes movement. Every act is planned, every word is weighted. He does not speak unless the geometry of his language is clean. He does not move unless the axis of his thought is centered. Thoth does not gift his current to the emotional, the impulsive, or the spiritually greedy. His current seeks minds with symmetry, restraint, and strategic fire. In this era, most people are trained to react before they understand, to feel before they observe, to express before they refine. The architect, king, is the inverse of all of this. He delays his reaction until the pattern emerges. He watches movements from the center of stillness. He speaks only when the silence itself has matured. This is not suppression, it is mastery. And the world, though it mocks him in public, secretly bows in private. For even the manipulators recognize when they are in the presence of an original. The energy of Thoth magnetizes this original out of dormancy. In the age of distraction, the architect, king, is the one who builds inner cathedrals, while the masses build nothing but digital noise. He plants seeds that may take decades to bloom, not because he is patient, but because he is eternal. His thoughts are not fleeting. They are measured structures, each one capable of shaping timelines. He does not wait for signs. He generates them. While the crowd prays for miracles, he works the unseen levers that produce them. The energy of Thoth is not interested in sentiment or suffering. It responds to structure, the one who builds internally, ruthlessly, precisely, silently, will find himself aligned with a current that rewrites all external conditions. The resurrection of the architect, king, is not an egoic fantasy. It is a metaphysical return of strategic manhood and sovereign vision. It is not loud. It does not seek followers. It builds silently until others find themselves living within its framework. Power in its highest form is never declared. It is embedded, and the initiated embed their mind into reality, not through wishful thinking, but through sacred design. The energy of Thoth enters only where that design has been made hospitable. It does not knock, it scans. And where it finds mental geometry, sharp thought, disciplined focus, silent strategy, it takes residence and begins the great work of unfolding divine dominion. The modern world has tried to erase the architect king. It replaced him with the performer, the victim, the influencer, the addict. It reduced thought to reaction, truth to popularity, legacy to trends. But beneath this false structure, the bones of the old temple remain. And it is through the energy of Thoth that those bones are illuminated again. The call does not go to the herd. It goes to the builder, not the one who demands change, but the one who engineers it, not the one who reacts to injustice, but the one who understands law and becomes its embodiment. This resurrection is not spiritual in the soft sense. It is political in the ancient sense. Your kingdom is not out there. It is the architecture of your choices, your rituals, your mental clarity, your symbolic language. Where you place your attention is where you lay your stone. What you permit into your mind is what you permit into your dominion. The energy of Thoth sharpens this awareness into weaponized lucidity, and the one who dares to build under its influence becomes more than a thinker. He becomes a constructor of sacred reality, a governor of invisible forces, a mirror of divine structure. There will be no public coronation. The architect king rises in silence, unnoticed by the world until the world begins to bend. His throne is forged in isolation, his authority tested in resistance, his voice refined in stillness. He does not impose his will. He encodes it. He does not argue with chaos. He overlays it with pattern. The energy of Thoth does not demand worship. It demands alignment. And when it finds a mind disciplined enough to carry the old geometry, it resurrects within it the ancient role, not prophet, not priest, but constructor, an invisible monarch seated at the helm of the real. There exists a forgotten law buried beneath the noise of civilization, a law not written in books nor etched into monuments, but encrypted in silence. It is the code of immortality, not the false promise of endless physical life, but the eternal relevance of presence, the capacity to outlast decay not through flesh, but through design, memory, and invisible continuity. Thoth does not speak of life and death as opposites. He speaks of frequency and interruption. What endures is what aligns. What fades is what fractures. The energy now approaching is not just a whisper from antiquity. It is a reactivation of stillness so powerful that it bends time itself. Stillness, in this age of movement, is seen as passive. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. Stillness, properly understood, is the posture of command. It is the moment before the architect draws the first line, before the strategist makes his opening move, before the magician utters the first word. Stillness is not the absence of motion, it is the suspension of chaos. In stillness, time slows, the veil lifts, and truth becomes visible not as philosophy, but as structure. Thoth's energy seeks those who can host this stillness without being consumed by the temptation to act prematurely. To host this level of stillness, one must first break the addiction to stimulation. Modernity has made noise holy. Opinions are applauded, speed is rewarded, attention is hijacked. But Thoth moves only where the circuitry is clear, the vessel clean, the signal undistorted. Immortality is not a mystical gift. It is a byproduct of symmetry. That which is perfectly aligned does not corrode. It repeats through time, untouched. Think of the sacred ratios embedded in ancient temples, in forgotten manuscripts, in pyramids buried beneath sand and secrecy. These were not built to last in matter. They were coded to endure in consciousness. This is the immortality Thoth offers, the ability to construct in such pure stillness that the structure becomes immune to decay. You were not taught to be still. You were taught to perform, to chase, to consume. Yet each act of unconscious motion weakens the geometric integrity of your inner temple. And so Thoth returns, not to teach you new movement, but to restore the sacred pause, the breath between commands, the space between symbols. It is here, in this void, that power is drawn from the divine grid. Here, in the stillness, you are neither man nor memory. You are blueprint. You are the silent seed of structure that predates language and transcends death. The code of immortality requires that you begin thinking in pattern, not emotion. Emotion reacts to the temporary. Pattern builds the eternal. Most people are ruled by inner storms that never resolve. Their thoughts are borrowed, their actions repetitive, their beliefs inherited. But the initiate under Thoth's gaze is summoned to cut through this noise with surgical silence. He must return to stillness not as escape, but as the central operating system. From here, he no longer lives reactively. He lives architecturally. Every move is encoded. Every silence is functional. Every glance is a glyph. Stillness, in its highest form, becomes transmission. The truly still mind becomes a beacon. Without speaking, it influences. Without arguing, it redirects. This is the art of Thoth, to become so ordered internally that external chaos rearranges itself in your presence. This is why immortality belongs not to the loud, but to the precise. Not to the popular, but to the pure. What you build in stillness will echo louder than what you shout in motion. The crowd does not remember the noise. It remembers the symbol that stood still as the world burned. And so you are now confronted with the deeper question. Can you be still while the world shakes? Can you design when all others react? Can you receive the frequency of Thoth not through effort, but through inner geometry? This is not about meditation in the soft sense. This is about becoming a vessel of divine calculus. Every thought refined, every emotion inspected, every motion weighed against the structure of the eternal. For those who can bear this discipline, immortality is not a theory. It is encoded in their presence. They are not remembered because they were loud. They are remembered because they became the silence from which new civilizations were drafted. The modern world wants you distracted, hurried, emotionally erratic. It fears the still man, because the still man cannot be provoked. He cannot be rushed. He cannot be swayed by the tides of popular delusion. He stands like a monolith, and in his stillness Thoth speaks. Not in words, but in vibration. Not in promises, but in pressure. It is in that moment, when you abandon the addiction to outer motion and collapse into precise inner symmetry, that the code activates. You begin to build, not with tools, but with thought. Not with effort, but with form. Not for recognition, but for eternity. You were never meant to be passive in the grand theater of existence. You were not designed to merely observe, react, or survive. You were constructed as a sovereign node of consciousness, a living cipher, capable of aligning with the very forces that shape worlds. The energy of Thoth does not arrive like a storm. It moves like a shadow cast from an ancient intelligence, testing every soul it touches to see who is ready to build, to govern, to remember. Each keynote has revealed a deeper layer of initiation, from awakening the dormant current, to mastering hidden laws, to surviving the invisible war for your mind, to resurrecting the forgotten archetype of the architect king, and finally, to embodying stillness so complete it becomes immortal code. This is not fantasy. This is strategy cloaked in spiritual form, a map drawn by the ancients, obscured by time, and now revealed once more to the few who can walk it without losing their minds. You will not find this path in institutions, religions, or social movements. You will find it in silent structure and sacred rebellion. The energy of Thoth does not bend to emotion or popularity. It bends to precision, discipline, and clarity of inner geometry. In a world that feeds on speed, he calls you into stillness. In a world that worships volume, he anoints those who move in silence. In a world drunk on chaos, he whispers a single command: build. For those with ears to hear, this is not just a transmission. It is a summons, a reactivation of ancient sovereignty, a blueprint for unseen dominion. You do not need more motivation. You need architecture. The kind that holds under pressure. The kind that endures when time forgets. The kind that once built empires not of stone, but of symbol, silence, and supreme order. This is your war. This is your inheritance. This is the return of the current.